the pregnant Apache woman who fought wolves men, and her own grief to stay alive. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The desert was never meant to be white. Snow had fallen across the Arizona plains, blanketing the red earth like a shroud. Taya moved slowly through it, her breath showing in the freezing air. Beneath her doeskin dress, her belly was round with life, though her body was worn thin by hunger and grief. Behind her lay the ashes of her village, black smoke curling into the sky where laughter used to rise. Her husband, Nantan, had fallen with the others, his blood dark against the snow. Taya had buried him with trembling hands, whispering his name to the wind before she ran. Now the wolves followed her trail. She could hear them at night, hungry and patient. But Taya didn't fear them. The soldiers were worse. As twilight bled into night, she built a small fire between the rocks. She clutched her belly, whispering in Apache to the child inside. "Your father was brave. You will be too." The wind carried back a single howl, long and mournful. By morning, the wolves were gone. Their prints vanished in the half-thawed mud near the river. Taya followed the water downstream, her legs shaking with exhaustion. That's when she saw him. A man in a worn Union coat, filling a canteen by the icy water. He turned quickly, a revolver already in his hand. Taya froze. "Hold on," he said, his voice steady but wary. "You're hurt." The wind lifted his coat, revealing a limp and a face older than his years. He was no longer a soldier, just a man trying to forget. Taya said nothing. She stepped back, but the ground gave way beneath her. The world spun as she tumbled into the snow. When she woke, she was inside a small cabin, her wounds bandaged, her stomach covered with a blanket. The man was there, tending a fire. "Name's James Carter," he said softly. "You were half frozen when I found you." Taya looked at him, her dark eyes cautious. "You were one of them," she whispered. He didn't deny it. "Was," he said. "Not anymore." For a long time, neither spoke. Only the fire crackled between them, two survivors of a war that neither had won. That night the wolves came again, this time to the edge of the cabin. Their howls pierced the stillness, echoing through the canyon. James loaded his rifle. "They smell blood," he said. Taya pulled herself upright, pressing one hand to her belly. "They smell fear." He glanced at her, surprised by the calm in her tone. Together they stepped outside. The moonlight revealed four shapes circling the cabin. James aimed, but Taya stopped him. "Fire scares them more than bullets." She threw a burning log into the snow. The wolves scattered, their eyes vanishing into the dark. For a moment the world was quiet again, except for the sound of her breathing. James turned to her. "You're not afraid of much, are you?" Taya looked at him with tired strength. "I've already lost everything." He wanted to tell her he understood, but some grief he knew could only be carried, not shared. Days passed. The snow melted into red mud. Taya grew stronger, though the pain in her heart never left. One afternoon, while James chopped wood, she saw dust on the horizon, riders moving fast. "Soldiers," she whispered. James dropped the axe. "They're not after me." "No," she said, her voice steady. "They're after me," he hesitated. "If they find you, they'll kill us both." Taya met his eyes. "Then we fight." As the riders approached, James readied his rifle. Taya took his knife, her hands sure and steady. The first shot cracked the air. The world turned into thunder. Gunfire, smoke, shouts in English and Apache. When it was over, 3 men lay dead. One of them wore a Union insignia. James's hand shook as he reloaded, staring at what he'd done. "You saved me," Taya said quietly. "No," he said. "I owed you that much." In that moment, surrounded by death and silence, something changed between them. Something fragile but real. The baby came with the spring rains. Inside the cabin, Taya gripped James's hand until her knuckles turned white. The storm outside roared like the world itself was being reborn. When the cries came, James knelt beside her, trembling, not from fear but from awe. "A girl," he whispered, wrapping the small child in a blanket. "She's strong like her mother." Taya smiled weakly, "and like her father." He looked at her, startled. "You mean—" She shook her head. Not by blood, but by choice. Outside, the storm broke and sunlight spilled through the cracks in the roof. Taya stepped to the door, holding her newborn close. She looked out at the wild land stretching endless and untamed, the same land that had taken so much and yet given her this one small, perfect life. She whispered to the wind, "Nantan, your daughter is safe." Behind her, James placed a hand on her shoulder. They were two people remade by loss, bound not by the past, but by what they chose to protect. And for the first time in a long while, Taya felt peace. In the land that tried to break her, she found strength, love, and the will to begin again. The year that followed was quieter than either of them had ever known. The cabin became a home. The garden James planted grew between rocks, and the small cradle Taya carved from cedar rested near the hearth. Their daughter, Sahale, learned to walk before she learned to speak, her laughter ringing through the canyon like birdsong. For a while, the world forgot them, or so they thought. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the red cliffs, James spotted movement on the ridge, two riders black against the fading light. He said nothing to Taya, but his eyes didn't leave that horizon until the night swallowed it whole. That night, Taya felt it too. That old chill in the wind, the one that whispered of danger. While Sahale slept, she stepped outside. The stars glittered hard and cold above the canyon, and somewhere in the distance a coyote cried. "Someone's out there," she said when James joined her on the porch. He nodded. "I saw them. Soldiers?" "Not soldiers. Bounty men, the kind who never stop hunting." Taya's hand went to the small beaded necklace she'd made for her daughter. "They won't take her," she said. James looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same fierce fire that had burned in her eyes the day he met her. The woman who had once fled for her life was gone. The one standing before him now was ready to fight for the life she'd built. At dawn, they packed quietly, food, ammunition, a small blanket for Sahale. They didn't plan to run far, just deep enough into the canyon to hide until the threat passed. But as the sun rose, a single gunshot shattered the stillness. The bullet struck the doorframe beside James. He ducked, pulling Taya down as splinters flew. 3 men rode out of the scrub, bounty hunters, dust-covered and armed. Their leader wore a broad hat and a silver star on his vest. "James Carter," the man shouted. "You've been hiding an Apache fugitive. There's gold for both your heads." Taya clutched Sahale close, heart pounding. James stepped out slowly, rifle in hand. "You don't want to do this," he warned. The man smirked. "We already did." Gunfire exploded. The canyon echoed with thunder. James took down one rider before a shot grazed his shoulder. Taya darted behind a boulder, loading her revolver with trembling fingers. She hadn't fired it since the raid on her village, but grief had long ago taught her how to aim. 2 more shots cracked. When the smoke cleared, only one rider remained, galloping away into the dust. James leaned against the porch, bleeding but alive. Taya dropped to her knees beside him, her face pale with fear and fury. "They'll bring more," he said between breaths. "Then we'll be ready," she whispered. She pressed her forehead to his, their daughter sleeping against her chest, the wind whistling through the canyon like a prayer. The wolves began to howl again that night, not in menace, but in warning. Somewhere out there, vengeance was coming, but so was courage.